So we are in a message series where we've been talking about some different types of bags, and you can see we've got camera bags up here this weekend, and I want to invite my friend Dar to come forward. Dar is a great photographer, and she's going to share with us a few photos that she's taken and kind of talk about how important it is to kind of keep things in focus in those pictures, how that plays a role. And so I'm going to give you the mic, Dar, and I'm going to actually take your camera because I know about this stuff too. Is that okay?
What do you know?
Well,
Don't you just use your camera? I mean, use your phone to take pictures?
I do, but I do also have a sister here who took a photography class in college, so I think I'm well qualified for this.
Something like this?
Yes, actually she has a camera very much like this one.
Do you know how to turn it on?
Yep, it says on right there, so I was just going to shoot. We've got a pretty...
Good.
Pretty,
you have
nice.
Are you can you see through the viewfinder?
I think your camera's broken, Dar.
Oh, maybe you should take the lens.
Oh, yeah, I knew that. I was just making sure you knew that. So.
Okay.
Okay, so while Dar shares, I might shoot a couple of pictures here. Oh, look at that. I'm going to invite my friend Tyler up here. I mean, I'd love to take some pictures of Tyler.
John, what are you doing?
You go ahead and talk about your pictures there, okay? You got one right behind you.
So
Don't mind me. I'll shoot Tyler.
Okay, you go ahead.
All right.
All right. Smile, Tyler. Don't move.
Nice.
All right, so John asked me
work it for us a little,
to
Tyler.
share
Oh, that's good stuff.
a few photos, and actually
Awesome.
the few started at like 2,000, and it got narrowed down to like 200, and then 20. And I said, you know what? I'm going to let John decide, Pastor John decide which ones out of the 20 he wanted to use today.
They were all really good,
too. Anyway, so it's about focus. Focus is actually a really, really important thing, but we really don't think about it because we just pull out our iPhones and we just shoot. We got the little viewfinder there. We don't even have to look through anything. It's going to do it. It's great. And then if you really use a camera, then you kind of have the outcome that you don't really think about it when you're taking the picture. But then when you look at it, you notice things about it. I mean, our focus is actually the point of interest when you're looking at a photo is what you want other people to see. So again, you don't really think about that. It's something that kind of has to be learned in time, that you can learn to control it, either by being a photographer or the built-in factors within the camera. So there's a few photos here that were selected. That's Jacob. The first one was Jacob. This one's Jacob, obviously. That one I did say to Pastor John I wanted him to use because I thought it was just cute. It's not a party without the chicks. So I'm a peep girl and I like peeps, so I had a good variety for that Easter.
You got another one, I think? Very cool.
This is Sebastian. That's our Great Dane. He's 3 years old now. This was his first portrait session at 8 weeks old. A little bit deceiving. You can see his nice eyes, and he's looking right at me, but it took a lot to get that photo.
Sure did.
So if it hadn't been in focus to be able to see it, then you really wouldn't know the beauty in his eyes and see the whole picture. So from the standpoint of focus, if we don't have things in focus of what we want people to see, then we're really not telling a story, and we really miss what the point is. And this is out at Yellow Springs. I don't know how many of you have been out there for the sunflowers, but the field is just phenomenal. It's usually like the second week in September. We got a little dancing going. It may have been that I was down on my knees or something shooting up, but kind of catching with the wind. So as far as focus, there's a lot of factors you have to think about. You can use a little out of focus to bring attention, but you can have the in focus is really what it's all about, what you want someone to see in it. And again, if you don't have the focus of interest, then you really aren't getting the message across about what you're wanting to point out.
So I sent the camera back to the media booth so we could show you a couple of my pictures as well to see kind of how I did here. I think we've got these.
Okay.
He moved on me, I swear.
Tyler, did you move? Where's Tyler?
Okay, well maybe
I don't think so.
Check another one.
I don't think so, John.
You think it's me?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That's a little bit better. I mean, he's in the center, but we really can't tell if he's smiling or not.
That's true. Okay, we'll see how I did the next one. There we go.
A little bit better, but what's going on at the bottom?
I think it's like a filter I was using.
Yeah.
I think.
That's always the trick photographers use. When they make a mistake, they turn it into something else. I think that's your finger.
I don't know. It's up for interpretation. You know, I mean, I think mine are pretty comparable personally. I mean, it's not like we're looking at them side by side here that we could see the... All right. Thanks, George, for that. I appreciate it. So clearly my pictures are not nearly as in focus as yours are. And it makes a big
Correct.
difference. Awesome. Well, let's thank Dar. Thank you so much. What a difference it makes when the picture's in focus, right? What a difference it makes when you know what you're doing as well. That never hurts either. We're going to tell a story today from the Bible of some folks who are going to witness something just incredible. Kind of like those earlier pictures, just something very beautiful and incredible, but they're not going to be able to see it straight because they have their focus out of whack. Not their camera focus, but their spiritual focus is out of whack in this situation. It's a story about Jesus, and he encounters a guy who had been born blind. Now think about that. In fact, close your eyes with me for just a minute, okay? Imagine that what you're seeing right now is all that you've ever seen. You never saw your mom. You never saw your dad. You never have seen a sunset. You've never seen a flower or a dog or the sky. What would that be like? How would life be different? Then one day, as you're sitting here in the darkness, along comes a man, and he says some things, he does some things, and suddenly, open your eyes. You can see. For the first time ever, you can see. Now that's amazing. And truth be told, we can't understand a fraction of how amazing that is because we weren't born blind. Unless you were born blind, you wouldn't understand what it's like to encounter it for the first time. Because for me, even when I say those things that the guy has never seen, I can picture them in my mind because I've seen them so many countless times. So he was born blind. John chapter 9, verse 1. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, which means teacher, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? So the disciples, what they're doing here is they're trying to give a theological answer for this physical problem that the man has of blindness. Because it's an example of natural evil, right? That there's a guy who we think should be able to see, and yet he cannot see. And so they're trying to give an explanation. And a commonplace explanation was to blame sin. Clearly, somebody sinned, and God is punishing this guy. And so they say, was it his parents? Because we know that sometimes the sins of a parent can impact a child. I mean, we see this with generational cycles of alcoholism or abuse or other things. Did maybe his mom and dad do something wrong, and this is why he's blind? Or was it because he sinned? Well, that seems problematic, right? Because he was born blind. But there were some Jewish scholars who actually believed you could sin in the womb, which sounds incredibly unfair to me. I mean, I have enough trouble not sinning out here, right? I mean, if I was getting like sins dinged against me before I was born, that doesn't seem fair whatsoever. But so they asked Jesus this question, and Jesus says, none of the above. Verse 3. It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so that the power of God could be seen in him. Now, this is important to note. This is a specific situation that Jesus is talking about. He's talking to one specific guy. He's not saying that all physical ailments are the result of sin. We know that's not the case. And he's not saying that all physical ailments are done so God's power can be manifested. It's not that God causes all these things to happen. Okay? He's not stating that. But Jesus is stating that in this situation, this guy, God's power is going to be shown through him in a very, very special way. And it's going to get a little messy too. Verse 6. Then Jesus spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. Now, regardless of the fact that Jesus is doing this, don't miss the fact that this is gross. This is nuts. Why do this? I mean, is Jesus just getting bored with the conventional miracle, so he's showing off a little bit here, right? Like, maybe today I'll put mud and spit on his eyes and then heal him. That'll be great, right? It seems like there should be something more. What is Jesus doing? Why is he doing this intentional act that seems kind of weird? It seems like there should be something more. Verse 7, he told him, go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Wow. I mean, imagine that. You've been blind from birth. People have tried. I'm sure lots of things have been tried in this guy's life, right? Well, did you eat this? Did you stop eating this? Did your mom sit you too close to the TV? Well, why don't you back off from the TV, right? All these kind of like home remedies. I'm sure he had tried every single one of them, right? So along comes the guy who puts mud and spit in his eyes. Sure, that's going to work. It's unique, right? But come on. And he goes to the pool to clean himself off, and he can see. He can see for the first time in his whole life. It's just the most incredible thing ever. It's the most incredible day of the man's life. Everybody should be happy. We should be throwing a party. This is a great success. But that's not what happens. You can imagine that something goes wrong here in this story, because I told you some people have their focus out of whack. Verse 8. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Kind of wonder if they're asking if this was like a scam or something, right? I knew he wasn't blind all along, right? No. But verse 9, some said he was, others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept on saying, yes, I am the one. Trust me, people. Yesterday, I couldn't see you. Today, I can see you. It's amazing. And like, I don't know, maybe you had a twin brother you've been kind of hiding. Did he just come in from out of town? No, it was me. I'm the one who couldn't see. Trust me. And they don't. They question because they've got their focus blurred. The neighbor's focus was blurred by putting logic over faith. And you know, friends, God has given us both a head and a heart, right? He's given us brains, he's given us feelings, he's given us the ability to understand things, and logic is very important. We need to study, we need to think. These are not contrary to the ways of God. But on the other hand, we also are people of faith. We believe in a God who is supernatural, who created the world. It means he's above all the laws of nature. If there's a blind guy who can't see and God wants him to see, God can make him see. Jesus did this throughout the Bible. He worked miracles in the Gospels. We see acts in other parts of the Bible where God heals people. God can do these things. We've encountered it right here in our midst. You heard a story just a couple weeks ago of a child who had been having seizures from a very young age, having seizures, multiple ones every day, was prayed over here, and over the course of being prayed for several times, went from seizures every day, eventually is now 9 months seizure-free. That's awesome. Praise God. He does that stuff. God can heal. He can do that. But the people miss it, because all they can look at is logic. He couldn't see yesterday, and mud and spit in your eyes does not make you see. So it doesn't make any sense that he was actually healed. So what do? Verse 13, then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made mud and healed him. Aha! Here's part of the problem. They don't want to believe this, because Jesus did this on the Sabbath. Remember, the Bible says that we should remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and that's a day we should set aside to do no work. So we work 6, we rest 1. That's the pattern that God had set. And the Pharisees were the ones who made lots and lots of laws around the Sabbath and other things. They would take one of God's laws, and then they'd add all these other buffer laws that they would want you to follow. So that in order to break God's laws, you'd have to break like a bunch of buffer laws first. And Jesus didn't like this. It's legalism. Jesus didn't like it at all. He spoke against it quite frequently. And so they bring this guy to the Pharisees and to point out the fact that Jesus had healed him on the Sabbath. Now, interestingly, scholars would debate as to what level of work you could do on the Sabbath. The rabbis would interpret this in different ways. And many believed that you could do acts of helping on the Sabbath. For example, if your donkey falls into a ditch, or your neighbor's donkey falls into a ditch, you don't have to just say, sorry, it's Sabbath day, see you tomorrow, good luck. You can help them out. Because while that is some work, it's an act of service, it's a good deed. It's the kind of thing that would be okay to do on the Sabbath day. But the interesting thing is, what everybody in this story would have agreed on is that taking mud, spitting in it, Jesus did it, okay? All right? He did. And then kneading that into a paste, I have worked. You say, are you kidding me? That's work? Well, it is. Because they had laws, a lot of laws around food especially. This was one of their favorite things to make laws around. And you're doing an act of kneading here, right? Like I'm kneading this stuff together. And that kneading was considered work. You could eat bread on the Sabbath, but you couldn't knead the dough. You couldn't bake it. You had to bake it the day before. So Jesus here, right, it's like, I should be getting tired, right? I mean, this is real wrist exercise here. I'll push through, do one more set, right? So Jesus is doing this, and he kneads the dirt, walks up to the man. I won't do that. That wouldn't be kind. And rubs it in his eyes. And that right there is work. We can't have work on the Sabbath day. That's clearly against the rules. The Pharisees knew this. The people knew this. A guy couldn't see ever, and today he can see. You would think that would be a bigger deal to us than the fact that someone needed a minute amount of dirt and stuck it on a guy's eyes, right? We would think. But no, that's not how it is for the Pharisees. They didn't interpret it at all in that way. In fact, they were very upset with Jesus. Their focus was blurred by legalism. The Pharisees' focus was blurred by legalism. And for us, we might say, well, you know, those silly Pharisees, they're easy to laugh at. They did a lot of silly things. But we can get blurred by very similar stuff. For us, it's more a judgmental attitude. Just as the Pharisees would get very legalistic and would be judgmental towards people who didn't interpret the law as they did, we can get judgmental about people who aren't enough of a certain area, right? They're not Republican enough, or they're not Democrat enough. They're not rich enough for you. They're not poor enough for you. They're not educated enough for you, or they're overly educated. They're too friendly. They're not friendly enough. And we put up all these things that we judge others based upon. Jesus said, judge not lest ye be judged, and yet we miss out on that sometimes. We judge in harmful ways. And we can, just as the Pharisees missed it, we too can miss the work of God that is right under our noses because we get judgmental attitudes and we hold these things against other people. We don't want to make that mistake. We don't want to have our vision blurred like that. So the Pharisees they're upset about this. Verse 18, the Jewish leaders still refused to believe that the man had been blind and could now see, even though he's right there in front of them. And so they called in his parents. They asked them, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see? His parents replied, we know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He's old enough to speak for himself. We know they were politicians, right? We can tell by their answer right there. They're great at evading this topic. Well, why? Verse 22. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying that Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's the church. This is why they said, ask him. He's old enough. So the parents look at their son, who they know has been healed, and they pass the buck to him to explain all of this. The parents, their focus was blurred as well. Their focus was blurred by fear. They were scared. They were scared of what the Jewish leaders would do to them if they said that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was the one who did this, because the Jewish leaders had really boxed themselves in. They had taught that Jesus is not the Messiah. No one can state that he is the Messiah, and yet he's going around now doing Messiah-like activity. He's healing. He's putting himself in the line of the prophets, right? When he sent the man away to wash himself, it was like the prophet Elisha in the Old Testament who had sent Naaman away to be washed in the Jordan and to come back healed. He's setting himself up in this same kind of position, and Jesus is claiming oneness with God the Father, and it's too much. It's too much for the Jewish authorities. And so they say, he can't be the Messiah. He can't be the one. And anybody who says he is, you're out of here. We're not having that. We're not having that in this church. It's a tough position. So they talk to the guy. The guy gives the obvious answer. He tells the truth. And what do? They throw him out of the church. He goes from being blind from birth to healed to now kicked out of church because he tells them who healed him. What a tragedy. I mean, if you had been blind from birth, how would you want to spend your first day seeing? I wouldn't want to spend it being interrogated by a bunch of religious folks, would you? I'd rather go to the beach personally, wouldn't you? Do you remember the first time you saw the ocean? Amazing, right? It's like, wow, God is so big to create something like that. I'd rather go to the beach, right? I mean, imagine if he would have done that. He could have seen the ocean. He could have looked up and seen the birds flying over him, right? And like, oh, I've heard those things so many times, and now to see him for the first time is amazing. He could have watched his first sunset. I mean, how incredible would that be? Or he looks over and he says, oh my gosh, that's what a woman looks like? There must be a God, right? This is incredible. This is the best thing ever, right? Oh, dang it, here come the Pharisees. I'm probably in trouble on that one too, right? But Jesus has committed this incredible act of healing, and all people can see is that he made mud on the Sabbath day. How easily we get blinded by the wrong things in life. How easily we miss out on the big works that God is doing because we get our eyes focused spiritually on the wrong things. Jesus hears about what has happened to this man. Verse 35, when Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? That was one of Jesus' terms for himself. The man answered, who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. You have seen him, Jesus said, and he is speaking to you. Yes, Lord, I believe, the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. He got it. Isn't it interesting that of all the people in the story, the only one who can spiritually see straight is the guy who had been blind all his life? And yet he can see what's right there in front of him. He can see the love of God through Jesus Christ working in his life, and he gives himself to Jesus. He worships Jesus. It doesn't matter to him what it costs him. It doesn't matter to him what his friends think. It doesn't matter to him what his family is scared of. He just knows that he was blind and now he can see, and that's some real life change right there. You know, when you've encountered the life-changing power of Jesus, whether it's through a physical healing or through a spiritual type of healing or seeing God working in the world around you, when you encounter this, it changes you and it helps you to conquer these other fears. It helps you to conquer this logic versus faith thing because you know that God can work in ways that are hard for us to understand. It helps you to conquer this fear piece because you know that perfect love casts out all fear. And so you can have confidence in what God calls you to do. And you don't have to just sit there. You can act, and God can build his kingdom through you. In fact, we've got an easy way for that to happen this week. In your bulletin, we've got these little Easter invite cards. And we didn't just put them there to remind you of when Easter is. Spoiler alert, it's in 2 weeks, right? You probably knew that already. We put them in your bulletin so that you could take them and invite others. And some of you will share it on social media, or others will take it to your place of work or to a friend or whatnot. We've got more of those out at the Connection Center for you. But use these as opportunities to invite your friends. We would be honored to get to share Jesus with them on Easter. And they'll come here because you've invited them. They probably won't just randomly show up. But when you have the courage, you say, oh, what if that sounds scary? What if they say no? Okay, they weren't going to come with you before, right? They're still not coming with you. It's going to be okay. Ask somebody else, right? What if they think I'm some kind of Jesus nut? I doubt that's probably going to be the case. An awful lot of folks go to church on Easter, and a lot of folks bring their friends on Easter. It's a fairly reasonable thing. Step out in faith. Ask God, God, who should I be inviting to come with me? It's a simple way of stepping through faith, through fear into faith. So Jesus responds to the man, and he says this, I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they can see that they are blind. Who's he talking about there? Verse 40, some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked, are you saying we're blind? If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty, Jesus replied, but you remain guilty because you claim you can see. Ouch. Jesus says, you're guilty because you tell other people that you know how things are. You lead others as if you've got this authority, and you're misleading them. You're guilty. Ironically, the one sinning in the story is not the one who makes a little bit of mud on the Sabbath. The one who's guilty are the ones who's leading them astray from the Messiah who is right there in front of them. How often do we miss that truth that is right there in front of us? What would it look like in your life if some spiritual blinders were removed? What would that look like for you? How would things be different? What if that fear wasn't there? What if that unforgiveness wasn't there? What if that pent-up anger that you've been stuffing in wasn't there? What if you would have the courage to give that to Jesus and say, Jesus, would you work on that in my heart? Would you show me the next steps I need to take? Would you just take it from me? Because Jesus wants us to see, for our spiritual eyes to be open, to see him more fully than we ever have before. I heard about this great organization. It's called 20 by 20 by 20, and they're working in Africa. Their goal is to help 20 million African kids see who can't currently see, because there is this surgery that costs $300 they can do on kids with a certain condition, and they've been blind from birth, and it will allow them to see. It's really an incredible thing, and I wanted to show you a video of a mom who is considering taking her two daughters there. Let's check this out.
Godoyamai bidunayan keno ondoreke choamare
আমার মনের মধ্যে আশা রাখছি আমার মেয়েকে নিয়ে এসেছি মানে কালকে আমার মেয়ের অপারেশন হলে আমাকে দেখবে চোখ ভর্তি
চোখের ব্যান্ডেজটা খুলে দেয় সে ছুটে নামে আর এমনিতে বলে মা আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি তাদের ভবিষ্যৎ যেন ফিরে আসে সেটাই তো চাই মা বাবা বলো লাস্ট কথা আমি আর কি বলবো আপনাদেরকে ধন্যবাদ দেওয়া দরকার আপনাদেরকে।
God, would you open the eyes of our hearts? We want to see you. We want to know you. We want to understand you more and more fully. God, forgive us for the times where we allow spiritual blindness to be our day in, day out reality. Lord, we have a relationship with you, the healer. You're here, and sometimes we don't give ourselves to that healing. God, I pray that you would be doing a healing work in our lives right now. God, would you be bringing spiritual healing right here in this room? God, would you be bringing healing, helping us to break through fear, helping us to break through pain, through unforgiveness, through broken relationships, through lack of trust in you, through whatever it is that is holding us back. Jesus, we give you praise that you loved us so much that you gave yourself for us so that we could be healed. Lord, we love you and pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.